You know ID in the town all day. ID in the SEA. You know ID in the town all day. ID in the SEA.
Hello and welcome to episode 389 of the Fabulous Peltoncast, sponsored by our friends at Pagliacci Pizza. I'm your co-host, Kevin Pelton.
And I'm Tristan Carcino.
And we are coming to you back in Renton, Washington, home of the Super Bowl 48 champion Seattle Seahawks.
And how fitting that you are back in Renton, Washington for the, of course, Doug Baldwin edition of the Peltoncast.
Oh, that is perfectly fitting. Shouts as always to Doug Baldwin Jr. in the Family First Community Center here in beautiful Renton,
Seems
Washington.
like people are using it. People are going in there.
The Storm held a clinic there recently. I think it was the same night I was coming to your place for the Halloween party. But,
Really? The Storm had a clinic there?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Doug Baldwin was there, as well as Storm GM Talisa Rhea. So
Nice.
Yeah, there you go. Things were happening. Things were happening. Well, it is still technically the home of the first place in the NFC West, Seattle Seahawks, even if it doesn't really feel like that. It's
because of the tiebreaker?
No, that's not why it doesn't feel like it.
No. I'm just saying, are they still technically first place because they don't win the tiebreaker?
I don't think you apply the tiebreaker at this point, especially when the teams haven't even played head-to-head yet.
All right.
That's my position on this. Also, don't say if the season ended today, because it doesn't.
Home of the first place, Seattle Seahawks.
That's about the way to put it. Well, we'll come back to the Seahawks later on in this pod. We have no beer this week because I was traveling home from LA earlier today.
Okay.
And did not pick any up, except for your Heineken Zero.
There we go.
But we still have some toasts. And we'll start by noting to everyone, please check out the Peltoncast Discord.
Hello.
Which is popping.
Is it popping?
There's active discussion there.
Wow.
At least relative to what it was the first 24 hours. Where it was like three of us. So I've made a clean break from Twitter.
You're done.
I'm done.
You are done with Twitter.
Under current management, I am done with Twitter.
Wow. That is wild. Personally, professionally, every single capacity, you are done with Twitter.
That is
I was wondering if that was the Discord, if that was why the move to Discord.
That was, people have suggested it repeatedly in the past. I think I trial ballooned it on a podcast and didn't hear a lot of positive feedback. But anyways, a number of people have already joined, and hopefully people who have already given up on Twitter or never were there in the first place and therefore did not see about the Discord will hear about it now and check out the link in the post note.
Well, there you go. Have you posted on Instagram?
No, I probably should do that as well.
Okay, yeah, Mrs. Fantasy Genius said to do that.
Yeah.
Post the invite on Instagram because
Of
you're
course.
not done with Instagram.
I'm not done with that now.
No, it's a fun community. There's stuff to talk about sports in a much more. It's so much easier to talk on Discord than it is on Twitter.
Exactly.
And like on Twitter, you're like typing out a response and it lives there, but it's sort of like a back and forth conversation on Discord, and I do appreciate that more. I'm just explaining Discord right now.
Thanks. Is there any other social media platforms you'd like to explain?
Instagram is kind of like, you've got the grid, and those are photos that live there for like a longer, bigger stories, things like that. And then you also have Instagram stories, but then there's Instagram Reels as well, which is kind of like the TikTok ripoff. So it's kind of like, they ripped off Snapchat with the stories.
I do.
Is that helpful?
Thanks. Okay. We'll have to bring Jan on for this segment.
She would say that you released a post, or what did she say? She's like,
Send out?
The photos you sent out on, the photos you sent out on Facebook. Let's hear from Jan strictly on social media.
One social correspondent.
See, it's just the podcast social correspondent. It is like on Saturday Night Live when they have the like social correspondent. It's like an 80-year-old. Jan is the actual version of that.
Yes.
We should have an etiquette conversation. Monthly, our etiquette correspondent should be Jan, because her etiquette is different than any other human being on the face of the earth.
That is definitely.
She has an ethos. It's different than anybody else, but there is an ethos.
Say what you want. There is an ethos. All right, well, let's get into the real tests. Congrats to Dylan Johnson and Parker Brailsford.
Whoa!
Named Pac-12 Offensive Player and Offensive Lineman of the Week, respectively, after Johnson ran for 256 yards Saturday against, that's what the East German scorers had it. Saturday against USC, the fifth most in school history, with Brailsford helping open those lanes for him. How exactly they determine Parker Brailsford of the five?
I know, I love it. They're like, yeah,
but
Parker Brailsford.
the vibes are good nonetheless. Congrats to the Seahawks' Devin Witherspoon, named Defensive Rookie of the Month for October when he recorded 2 sacks and a pick six.
Who was the Rookie of the Month for September?
Defensive Rookie of the Month?
Yeah.
I mean, I assume it had to be Jalen Carter.
Look, congrats to Devin Witherspoon. Awesome month. I watched a lot of that Cowboys-Eagles game that happened yesterday, and so many other Eagles made plays. And I love that everybody, like Hassan Reddick gets a sack, and people are like, but Jalen Carter? Everybody else on the Eagles.
PFF actually watches all 11 players on every play with the coaches film that you're not getting while you're watching the broadcast.
So the Defensive Rookie of the Year odds, you think, are that influenced by PFF?
I mean, I think that the priors have been confirmed.
It was an inside job. This Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Chris Collinsworth is running the whole thing.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of money on Jalen Carter. Okay. Devin Witherspoon is the 4th Seahawks player to win this honor without looking at my screen.
Defensive Rookie of the Year?
Defensive Rookie of the Month.
Of the month, sorry.
Can you guess who the other 3 were to do so?
I'm going to guess that Earl Thomas won it.
Nope.
Cam Chancellor?
Nope.
Bobby Wagner?
Nope.
Wow! Cortez Kennedy?
Nope. I don't know when they started the defensive.
The Boz was never good, right?
No, not really.
Who was a good rookie? I don't want an era just yet.
I mean, there is one fairly obvious one you're missing.
Is there?
Yeah.
Did Jordan Brooks win one?
No.
Reek?
Yes.
That's the obvious one.
You have to go all the way back to 2022.
I honestly was thinking of more like long-term notable players.
The other 2, do you want an era?
Sure.
They both played in the Mike Holmgren era.
A Defensive Rookie of the Year in the Mike Holmgren era.
Yes. One of them, like, pretty much peaked as a rookie, I would say.
Oh, Ken Hamlin?
No.
That was a pretty good guess, though, wasn't it?
That's in the ballpark. That perhaps fits that description. Yeah, I would concede that.
Peaked as a rookie. It wasn't Michael Boulware, right?
No.
He had that one monster play.
Much more notable than these players.
I really have no idea.
Lofa Tatupu.
Oh, that's such an obvious one.
Yes.
Ugh.
The other one is Rocky Bernard. We could be here all night.
Rocky Bernard?
And you would
Good
never
for
guess
him.
that one.
Wait, you said there were 4?
Maybe his PFF. Well, he's the 4th.
The Spoon is the 4th.
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
Offensive Rookies of the Month.
They might
by
not
the
go
way.
back that far.
I didn't see this list. Yeah, I don't know when they started this award. There have been
Lofa
3
was
offensive rookies.
such an obvious one.
3 offensive rookies of the month for the Seahawks.
Ken Walker.
Correct.
I assume Russ won one.
Correct.
And Sean Alexander
did not. I mean, he didn't play that much as a rookie. It was year 2, really.
Some like monster. Maybe that was year 2. He had monster games.
Where he had like the
Thomas Rawls.
No.
He was the best running back in the NFL for a month.
I don't know if he was for a full month. It may have spanned October and November.
This is about the same era, though, right?
As
these players, like it's not like the 80s or something.
No.
It's not like Joey Galloway, like that. That's too far back.
Correct.
Corn Robinson?
No.
What period is this one?
90s.
90s. Oh, it would have felt like they wouldn't have given it to an offensive lineman, right?
Or would they?
Is Walt Jones?
Walter Jones is the other one.
Wow. Okay.
There you go. All right, completing our toast. Congrats to J.P. Crawford, Cal Raleigh, and Julio Rodriguez, all named finalists for Silver Slugger at their positions. The Mariners are also a finalist for the Team Award, which is a nonsensical award.
What?
Because you could just give it to the team that scored the most runs. By definition, they're the Silver Slugger team.
I really think that the Rangers have a good shot at that one.
I do like their odds. I do not like the Mariners' odds in this one. All right, well, we'll talk a little more Mariners heading into free agency
big
later
news.
in the pod.
We've got all sorts of Transact to talk about. Trader Jerry's been busy.
I did not do research on the backup catcher they acquired.
The AA backup catcher.
I'm sorry.
Wow.
But I thought we should start by going back to Saturday night. UW beating USC in prime time at the Coliseum with me in attendance, and you also in the city of Los Angeles, but not at the game.
That's all that matters. Okay, so you were there.
I was there.
Tell me about it. We basically haven't talked about this at all.
We have not. That's correct. So we both mentioned yours more so than mine because, as we talked about on last week's pod, you were flying in the day of the game and out, or in the day before and out the day after.
I did the travel as if you were going to the game.
I mean,
like midday on the day before, and then in the morning the day after.
Yes, if you were like going to the game and spending the least time in LA possible.
Those flights were not cheap. And I did not know why until I got to the airport and looked around.
That never processed you?
Literally,
you knew that I was
did
flying
not
to
cross
LA
my
for the
mind.
game.
Not once. There were so many things about that flight that were just like classic, like people know how to travel. Very much classic Husky fans. It was into Burbank.
Yes.
Number one. If you're in the know, you know to fly to Burbank.
Oh yeah, you know who was on my flight. You do know because I told you
Bob
in the
Rondo.
chat. Bob Rondo. Shouts.
Did
to
you
Bob.
you went to Burbank also?
Of course.
Oh, okay.
Who do you think I am?
Number two, there were like literally you ever check the wait list, right?
Yeah.
There were literally 60 plus people on the wait
how
list.
low among them were you? I guess you paid a high price
I
for
wasn't
your
on
ticket.
there
You weren't even on there?
because I had 2 tickets. So I didn't have like a single. I would have probably been in the 50s or whatever. I didn't have the chance to upgrade.
I was near the very bottom of my list, that's for sure.
And then every single person, it was TSA pre-check or clear, Alaska MVP into Burbank. That was the trifecta of people traveling down there with the Husky polo on.
I mean,
It was a wild group. And I'm there indescript. You know what I mean? People would have assumed I had nothing. They would have been like, yeah, a lot of Husky fans, a few non-Husky fans here, and that was me.
Well, you weren't traveling for the Husky game.
No, it actually made me angry seeing all the Husky fans, partially just because of how annoying it was going through like TSA pre-check or whatever with all of them. But
in Burbank?
No.
It actually was enough to affect the total number of TSA pre-check in Seattle?
Absolutely it was. Every single look, they moved through that line fast. It was a short pre-check line because it was midday, but like every single person in that pre-check line was a Husky fan.
I tried the save a spot because my traveling companion does not have pre-check.
I don't even understand how that works.
And let me tell you, like the Costco hot hamburger, I cannot recommend anyone use the spot saver program at SeaTac.
If you could use the spots, if it worked, it wouldn't work. Does that make sense?
Well, the idea is they're supposed to cap the number of people so that it moves faster.
How do you?
But
how
they
does
did
the
not
save a spot
correctly
thing
cap
work?
the number of people.
Where do you go when they save a spot? Literally,
there's
what is the
designated
process
lines for it.
There's a designated save a spot line.
Yeah. And you can only enter it within 15 minutes either way. I mean, it's if it worked correctly, it would be like Lightning Lane at Disneyland. Something
Okay.
they did successfully use this weekend.
Does Lightning Lane work though?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Yes, it
Lightning
does.
Lane works.
Worked very well. Anyways, so Saturday, get to the stadium. I got down there kind of late. Walked through the USC campus a little bit just to check it out. Had never been to the Coliseum. Have never been in that area. Period.
I've done that.
Of LA.
It's nice.
It's very nice. And so they're tailgating. There are a few tailgates. There's like limited parking near the stadium. The tailgating is just like they carve out patches of grass on the campus and
Okay.
people show up and tailgate. And it felt similar to the Stanford tailgate that we once attended. It felt very bougie.
I think it is.
And
It's a
I'm sure-
private college in the city of Los
It
Angeles.
is, but I'm saying that like sometimes stereotypes exist for a reason.
Yeah.
Are correct. And I would say that the fans in general, just in the stadium, it was like very much being among the beautiful and chosen people. Is how I
At
felt.
USC?
Oh yeah. And I say this like, look, UW is not Little Sisters of the Poor here. We have our TSA pre-check and our MVP
yeah.
status, but there's still levels to this shit.
USC is different.
Like people are like styled to come to the game
That's
in a way that you
hilarious.
couldn't at UW because you have to prepare for the sheets of rain that are
Yes.
going to be falling on you.
How
all
would you
game.
compare it to Stanford? Because my takeaway from Stanford was quite old and disinterested.
No, not like very young. I'm not very young. I mean, obviously, and it was alumni weekend, so there was a lot of people back for homecoming.
Not that many. Am I right? A lot of open seats there at the Coliseum.
I mean, the attendance was still higher than at the UW Oregon game. They just have a really fucking big stadium.
It's in LA. Percentage-wise, there was a better attendance for UW Oregon.
And there was a lot of Husky fans there, I will say that.
Hell yeah. There were not that many Oregon fans, as noted.
And there were still a good number of Oregon fans. We never made that much noise because the USC game operations didn't set up easy opportunities for for UW fans to chant. Weird that they wouldn't do that. But yeah, I mean, and the other thing that really stood out, the Coliseum experience overall, a little challenging. The bathrooms are a million miles from your seat.
I mean, what year was it made?
1923. It's literally 100 years old. Yeah.
In the 1920s, people didn't need bathrooms near them.
We had to walk around 60% of the stadium to get to the gate that we were allowed to go in because you had to go in the gate near your section.
Oh, that's so stupid. I hate that.
That was quite annoying. But once you get in the actual stadium, it is gorgeous. And
really?
There's something about the sun in LA, particularly, I mean, it was at golden hour when this game kicked off.
Yeah.
4:30
It was kind of chilly
PM.
at night.
Oh, yeah. Definitely needed the hoodie. There's just something about the colors in LA that look more vibrant than anywhere else. It was really quite incredible.
I agree with that.
And so between the third and fourth quarter, they light the torch, which that's, UW is trying to create a tradition with this whole Purple Haze thing. That's a real tradition.
Purple Rain?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes, not Purple Haze. Different song.
The Purple Rain is not a bad. I think they have an idea. They've got a thing. I think they actually figured it out.
They should just put that between the first and second quarters,
Yes.
where right now they have, I forget what generic 80s song they have.
They do Don't Stop Believing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which has no tie to UW or UW football or anything.
No, that one's kind of an L. The Purple Rain thing though is a good thing.
It's cool. It's just not a hype thing.
It is a very slow song
It's a chill thing.
to play between the third and fourth quarter.
Yeah.
It was also, I think, when you play it for a victory.
Oh, yeah. It worked perfect with people on the field after the Oregon game.
So you're
I'm not
in
saying
favor.
that's sarcastic.
Everybody should just go on the field.
Look, don't take my words out of context here.
Always on the field. When Oklahoma State beat Oklahoma, the fans rushed the stadium, and I was just like, this team lost to Kansas last week. I get that it's the last bedlam ever, but come on, act like you've been there.
I respect it. Even if I don't agree with it,
I feel like field storming has become much more prevalent this year. I think there's more field
I
storming.
think it's happened over time.
They took the goalposts and threw them into a lake. This actually happened.
Wait, this week?
Kansas did.
Wait, did they?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Honestly, it is truly excellent.
Wow.
It is. That's one of the things when people complain about college football, and I'm like, the kids tore down the goalposts and threw them into a lake. How can you not be for this?
Did you see the pool? Anyways, the USC crowd.
Yeah.
We talked about angst on last week's pod. Angst level's pretty high
Oh,
among USC fans.
angst.
And especially after the Huskies took the lead at the end of the first half and marched the ball down the field at the start of the second half. I could feel in my bones how badly USC fans wanted to boo their defense. They were desperate to boo their defense. And then that fluke tipped interception
I
had to
haven't
happen
even seen it. I had no idea how there was an interception.
and bail them out. It could have been the Huskies taking a two touchdown lead at that point. The game plays out totally differently from that point on. Instead, USC stayed in the game.
They had it was a lucky tipped pick.
I mean, look, there's been a lot of Michael Penix Jr. tipped passes lately, which is not ideal, but a lot of them have also been finding their ways directly to defenders, which sometimes they just fall harmlessly to the ground.
I mean, it did feel like we can't really complain about it. It was sort of we got one at the end of the half, and then they got one to begin the half.
They did.
And so it was when karmically it felt like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and for some reason, they seem very convinced that they should have fired Alex Grinch last week, as if that would have changed something. The defensive coordinator interim defensive coordinator is not changing that much between week 8 and week 9 of the season. Or I think they're 9 and 10 because they only have 2 weeks left.
I feel like they probably should have fired Alex Grinch after basically every game they played. So I don't know if I agree with that, because I do think there is I
just don't know what it's doing midseason. Did you really feel a difference after the Huskies fired Jimmy Lake midseason? Which, by the way,
there was a little bit of energy for
almost 2 years ago to the day. Well, yeah, then they played games and the energy was lost because the coaching was not good.
I think there was at least one game.
I mean, obviously, like, the reason to do it midseason is to set you up to hire a replacement more quickly at the end of the season.
They knew they're going to fire Alex Grinch.
But it's not like they lost that game because of the fact that Alex Grinch was the defensive coordinator. They did not.
No, I agree with you. I mean, they lost the game because of the defense, but probably not specifically Alex Grinch, or at this point.
Yes. It's just too late. Like, if you're going to make that change, it's got to be, in a meaningful way, it's got to be before the season. There's nothing a defensive coordinator is doing at this point that is going to change.
So did they never booed the defense?
They grumbled a little bit, but the vibes on both sides.
It's a lot harder to boo a defense than an offense. I
feel
like
as unconfident as USC fans were about their team's chances, so were UW fans relative anytime USC had the ball.
You assume they were scoring a touchdown every single time they touched the ball.
Yeah, which was right for most of the game. And Caleb Williams had one of the more magnificent, like, improvisational games. Speaking of someone who watched Russell Wilson through his prime, like, there were a lot of plays like that. The spin move that he hit was incredible. You've seen that, right?
No, I've seen like 3 plays. Well, I've seen 3 plays before the very end. I watched the fourth quarter-ish.
Yeah, I mean, that didn't necessarily gain a lot of yards. He had already picked up the first down, but it was just like, I forget which cornerback it was, maybe Elijah Jackson, but just completely shook him. And it was an incredible play to get out of the sack and throw the touchdown. I think was that on 4th and 1, that play? I can't remember. But, like, just time after time, so much pressure on him all game. Braylon Trice, most pressures of any player in FBS last week for the second consecutive week, according to PFF tracking.
So you would say that the defense overall, structurally speaking, process-wise, maybe wasn't that bad, even though they gave up whatever.
The run defense, still some issues. The same thing that we saw against Stanford, where the run fits in terms of just there's a giant, wide, gaping hole to run through, which obviously you have benefited from on the other side. So they weren't the only ones.
Oh, they fired Alex Grinch.
They did, yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yes. I don't think it's going to help them beat Oregon this weekend.
If they beat Oregon this weekend and their defense plays better, and we're coming back to this conversation.
Okay, we'll do it.
We should definitely be cheering for them to beat Oregon also.
I suppose so. Caleb Williams, at times it felt like the Huskies were better off not pressuring him because of the fact that, they would lose contain and Caleb Williams would find a route out of it somehow. But obviously that wasn't the case, and ultimately the game was won by Zion Tupuola-Fatui playing with a heavy heart after the passing of his father the previous week, forcing a fumble, and then the Void to Unufi sack on 3rd down that, when USC had the ball with a chance to take the lead with a touchdown, and then, the final drive, additional pressure. But
what is going through your head there on that drive?
When USC has the ball?
Yes.
Oh, I hope that the only scenario I saw where UW was going to win the game was if USC scored a touchdown to go ahead, and then UW managed the clock such that they scored a touchdown and USC didn't have a final real possession.
I actually think we timed it kind of well, in the way that, in the weird way that I was thinking this with the Oregon game, where I was like, this could work itself out. Where it's like they can score a touchdown and then we have enough time to come back and score again and leave them with such a little amount of time, which didn't end up happening for UW because they ended up scoring way too fast. But it was like against Oregon.
Yeah.
But it was like there's a way to make this happen in this back and forth football game.
But USC,
where you're going to be last, but you need to score a touchdown.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was kind of the vibe that I had going into that drive. I mean, literally every single time. So I'm like during the wedding, checking my phone or whatever, like as the actual ceremony is happening. Like it would have been pretty hard to have been watching during that. And every time I look down, it's just like touchdown,
accepted.
Touchdown USC, touchdown UW, touchdown USC, touchdown UW. And I have no idea basically what's going on the entire game. And then I look back at it, I'm trying to put it away, be a normal human being or whatever. But in the back of my mind, there was one point where I was like, I'm feeling a lot of anxiety right now. And I was talking to to Mrs. Fantasy Genius, and I was like, oh, it's because of football. Like, I'm thinking about football right now more than anything else. Somebody handed me a cigar early on, like right after the ceremony. They were like, we're going to smoke these later. And I was like, I sure as hell hope that we're going to smoke these later.
There you go.
Because at the second that I saw that USC had gotten the ball with 2 minutes left and the Huskies were up 10, I took that cigar, put it behind my ear, and I was like, it's time. So that was an awesome moment that happened in that situation. It's a great way to experience this game. But I glanced at my phone when there was like UW had scored the touchdown. There was like a minute left before the half. And I just looked at it really quickly and I was like 35-28. And I was like, fuck. And I was like, wait, UW 35-28? It was kind of like, how did that happen? Because that was the big change initially.
That was I mean, we talked about UW just needed a turnover in this one, which they hadn't forced a lot of this season. And that was it. They got it.
And then so I was paying a little bit more attention in the second half. I was actually able to watch for pretty large chunks of the second half. And two perspectives. I have a hater's guide to Caleb Williams, but before then, I was basically just like, they're kind of running a lot of garbage. USC.
I don't know that I would say garbage.
They're running a lot of wide receiver screens. The offense is heavily designed.
I mean, it is an air raid offense.
But like to me, that's a fine offense. But you're going to get some holdings occasionally. And if you recall that sack that happened, it was after a big play that USC got that got called back because of a hold.
It was a 3rd and 7. Was it a touchdown to Tosh Washington?
No, it wasn't a touchdown.
Okay, but he had picked up the first down, and then it ended up being a 6-yard penalty because the holding was, in fact, beyond the line of scrimmage.
And I was like, give me one penalty. That's what I feel like needs to happen. If UW is defending on 2nd and 20, I think there's an okay shot at stopping USC. But those were what the circumstances needed to be. That's how good that offense is and how bad the UW defense is. But a couple of things that they do by making their offense that way, obviously it spreads. It's a genius offense in college. It's one of those things, though, where
especially
I'm like,
if you can also throw the ball deep, which they also did. And also if you throw in a play that like nobody has ever seen before.
No, it was the most. I saw like one. I haven't even seen the full play. It was the most impressive flea flicker I've ever seen in my entire life.
When I saw it live, I honestly 100% thought, oh, he just panicked and threw the ball to Caleb Williams.
You're sure it was designed?
Yes.
Okay, it was
yes.
a design.
I think they've talked about it. Certainly the way the UW coaches talked about it. It was designed.
Oh, it was. I was like, damn.
Because also, like, what my first thought was, well, somebody must have gone downfield. One of the offensive linemen must have gone downfield, because if it actually was a receiver screen, that would have happened, and you couldn't throw the ball past the line of scrimmage.
So they clearly
that's
waited
why know it's a design play. But even when I watched the replay, I was like,
that's where I saw it.
Believe it.
That's where I saw the replay on. It was on the fucking LA news, and they're like, rough night for teams in LA, and I was like, you're damn straight it was. And the Lakers lost too. There's no beating the Supersonics that night, but they showed the highlights of it, and I was like, they're just showing some run that he broke, and I was like, oh my! I was taken aback. That's how good of a play call that was. And there was the touchdown that
it was like I couldn't even be mad. I was just impressed.
There was a touch. I saw it on my phone pop up as like whatever, a 40-yard flea flicker, and I was just like, I'm sure the defense just got tricked or whatever. It was one of those things where I couldn't blame them too much. The touchdown that he threw to the sideline where the receiver came back, dragged his feet, ended up getting 2 feet in. Yeah. That was the most impressive throw that I saw from Caleb Williams. The creativity stuff is good. I will say, if I was an NFL team, this is not talking about character or whatever, I would be a little bit nervous. I think he's the number 1 pick in the draft. I would trade almost any player aside from Devin Witherspoon for Caleb Williams to be the Seahawks quarterback next year. But seeing there was a stat that they had about how much time he has to throw in the pocket, and it's the most, I think, it's definitely the most in the Pac-12, and it might have been the most in the country.
I'm shocked by that because he was under pressure all night last night. And that was something we talked about going into the game, was like his passing stats have all been better last year than when he won the Heisman, but the offense hasn't been as good because USC has allowed many more sacks this season.
Sacks are a quarterback stat sometimes, and I think there's a little bit of that's happening in the sacks. He's had a lot of time to throw, and that would be a thing that would make me nervous because in the NFL, nobody has a lot of time to throw. Like it is a different level.
You certainly can't count on it.
And the other piece is those passes, like
But
that
I feel like that
it's
was kind
not
of
an offense in the
that was
NFL.
kind of the criticism of Stroud, wasn't it? That like, oh, he had such an easy situation at Ohio State.
It's really hard to tell because sometimes it's right and sometimes it's wrong.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that's why it's difficult. Same with Trevor Lawrence, right? Trevor Lawrence had tons of time. It took him a while to get there to adjust to the NFL, but now you would say Trevor Lawrence is
I
a
think
good
it took him a year to get the right coach.
I mean that too, but it's not like he was excellent right away. Trevor Lawrence even still is not like an amazing quarterback or whatever. But sometimes players who have a bunch of time to throw end up being bad because it's a lot harder. So you have situations on both ends. That's why it's very hard to evaluate quarterbacks. I still would have Caleb Williams as the number one pick by far.
Yeah.
But like, and I think he's extraordinarily impressive. He also looks like Pat Mahomes when he's moving around. So it's really hard to not see Patrick Mahomes when you're watching Caleb Williams because of he moves very, very smoothly. He could do the scrambling thing. He's probably a better runner than Mahomes, who's like deceptively good runner or whatever, but like he could throw downfield. He could do those passes. He could make those passes where he's throwing it to a spot. The receiver wasn't even looking.
He did miss a couple of deep balls in this game, which the Huskies did as well. There was a couple of situations. I think Jalen Polk had his defender beat, and it was just like a little bit past him, which, makes sense because if it were really easy to complete deep passes, everyone would just throw them every play.
Kind of works against us.
Oh, no.
But there were a few plays that the Huskies made. All of the conversation about the offense and whether it's broken. Obviously, you're playing USC, one of the worst defenses probably in the country.
But a lot better defense than Stanford over the course of the season.
It's wild. And there was nothing about this offense that looked broken at all.
I'm old enough to remember when people were angsty about the Husky offense, and I thought that was stupid in the moment, and I continue to think that's stupid, and hopefully I will not regret that.
If you want a hater's guide to this Huskies win as well, I don't think they're going to be able to do it on the ground like they did it. It's almost like cheating. You know what I mean? To be able to hand the ball off.
Do you want to go in the stats? I have a stat on this.
Let's go in the stats.
The Huskies came into Saturday all season long negative rushing EPA over the course of the season. They had 22.6 rushing EPA against USC.
I mean,
Jalen Johnson now is number one in the Pac-12 in rushing EPA strictly because of that game.
Wild.
I don't know where he was before last week, but can't have been anywhere close to that.
There's a couple things you could point to if you want to point to this and say that this actually does portend well for the future. At this point, it doesn't fucking matter. You just need to win games. There's 3 left. We don't need to really worry too much about what it means or anything like that, what it looks like.
Process is out the window.
You got to beat Utah, and you got to beat Oregon State, and you have to beat Wazoo, and then, God forbid, whoever they're playing in the Pac-12 championship if they were to get there.
In the unlikely scenario, they were to play in the Pac-12 championship.
But all that matters is these 3 games, and it doesn't really matter the process. What I'm saying is that if you want to look at it positively, you would say that the offense, Michael Penix being healthy, being able to throw the ball more efficiently, opened up the lanes, the offensive line getting healthier. Like, there were some things that happened in this game that weren't just that. Like, Penix had to make plays, right? The touchdown that he threw to Devin Cole.
USC is a bad run defense. They have not been this bad of a run defense at any point.
It was funny watching these defenses where I just felt like they were bracing themselves. When I would watch the Husky defense, I was like, they are just bracing for the wide receiver screens and praying that they get a tackle or something, praying that something good would happen. It was a very strange game to watch, but ultimately, like we talked about, when you look at the units, the UW offense and the USC offense were pretty much the same, and the UW defense was a little bit better, and literally they made the play. Like, that's it. There weren't a lot of plays. There was the play that happened, ZTF play in the first half, and then the play at the end of the game, getting the hold. That's it. That's the difference in the game. They got the ball back. They punched it in. It was over.
Yep.
And I was outside smoking a cigar in beautiful Los Angeles, California, with a victory against the USC Trojans. Bring on the Utes.
And I met up with our tailgating crew who were 8 rows behind us in the same section.
I thought you were going to say 8 sheets to the wind.
Oh, so some members of the group were, and hung out over the UW tunnel as players were walking off the field.
That's awesome.
To cheer them into the locker room. It was a great time. There was one player I I gotta go double check who it was who came into the stands like directly behind us to take photos with his family. So it was fun. I mean, so many players have family there. It's like you have poo-pooed the importance of playing in LA from a recruiting standpoint. Let me tell you, I saw it firsthand how important it is.
There was somebody there was a tweet about there was a USC recruit who was just cheering for UW in the game, and I was like, hell yes. I think that USC will be okay long term. They'll be fine. Obviously,
people are angsty about Lincoln Riley, which is wild.
I mean, there's a reality similar to UW. I have no idea who the other quarterback is on USC's roster. I would guess they're going to go tap into the transfer portal and find a quarterback. I think both of these teams.
I don't know. They might have a 5-star recruit sitting there. I don't remember who USC has recruited recently at QB, but that's an option too.
Lincoln Riley is the skill of making quarterbacks Heisman Trophy winners and first picks in the draft is a very desirable thing to a lot of very good quarterbacks out there.
And they'll figure out the defense piece. It's not that hard. I
truly don't know if they. I think they will figure out the defense piece. Things are getting a lot harder. They have been living in a dream world right now, defensively speaking, especially. Lincoln Riley has coached in the Big 12 and the Pac-12. He's never coached against the Big Ten. Like, the defenses are about to get harder.
The weather is about to get harder. I don't really believe that there's like a schematic advantage for the Big Ten over
I'm not
the
saying
Pac-12
that there's
and
a
the Big 12.
schematic advantage, and I've been on the record as saying I think that the Big Ten will start to look more like the Pac-12 over time in a way that the SEC is not as much. The Big Ten, and it might be partially weather related.
I think it's all weather.
There was no weather at bay in Iowa and Minnesota. Like, those teams are what they are. There's not going to come a time. But they're also
built the way they are because they play in the weather they're in.
The 10-7 game or whatever happened in like early October, mid-October. It wasn't happening in the snow.
I'm just saying, if you plan your team to be low scoring and to be able to win low scoring games, it's going to do that even in other weather.
Yes.
But then they're also going to go to USC in November and they're going to get fucking smoked.
Maybe. I think there are going to be some harder defenses that they play overall. I think that the Big Ten recruits defense better, coaches defense better overall. There's going to be some questions.
I think they do it because they have more money. So to that extent, sure. But they also should coach offense better by that logic. So I don't buy it.
Anyway, I look forward to seeing them in the Big Ten the next time that we play them.
We have a schedule for the Big Ten. I don't know if we're going to go into it at this point because that's way too far off.
Oh, we have to go in the schedule.
No.
Not?
No.
What?
It's too far off.
We have Michigan coming to Seattle, Washington.
I mean,
second ever Big Ten game.
Yeah. Oregon in the final week of the season.
Yes. No, it confirmed what we talked about last week about Wazoo is going to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
All right. That's all we can talk about the Big Ten schedule.
Yeah.
It was great in the last Pac-12 meeting of USC versus UW to get a victory in LA. When you looked at the schedule preseason, you said to yourself, "This is the hardest game." Now every game, again, there's only 3 left. Every game that remains is the hardest game.
Agreed.
So it doesn't even matter who the opponent is. Every single game is this isn't fucking Stanford, Arizona State, or whatever. These are must-win games. I think the Huskies understand that the pressure is on at this point. I would be surprised if we saw any performances like we saw in those games against Stanford. And I'm a little bit of a believer in the Penix sickness.
I'm a believer in. I mean, the other thing is look, you go back to 2016. That wasn't a great USC team
that beat UW.
That beat UW and kept them from having a perfect season that year. Like, USC has been there as a stumbling block a lot of times over the years, less frequently in recent years, in part because of the fact that the teams just haven't played each other as often under the Pac-12 North-South setup. But that's a real thing. That's a huge. I don't care what's going on with USC defense.
No, I mean, we talked about it. It was a game that was harder. It was a scary game. I mean, they were on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 game win streak to end the season.
Oh, in 2016?
Yeah, they won the Rose Bowl beating number 5 Penn State.
Oh, okay. But they were unranked at the time, right?
They were number 20 when they beat us. But
basically the same as last week.
That was a good USC team.
Shouts to at Dogs House 10 on social media for noting the last time the Huskies beat both Oregon and USC the same season. 1996.
Really?
Yeah.
1996.
So it's been a minute. That's don't play this one.
Their loss is that there was the good Stanford team that we just beat the shit out of. They lost to Alabama in week 1. They lost to Stanford and then at Utah, and then they ran the table after that.
Okay.
And it wasn't an easy running the table. There was us, who were number 4 in the country, and Penn State I think that must have been a Saquon Penn State. It was basically the same team we played the year after.
Right.
But that was a good USC team. That's why we talked about this. This was not an easy game. I don't give a shit what their ranking is after this. Like, I don't care about anything else. It was a hard game to win, no matter what. They're still playing the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. USC still gained 500 plus yards.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's not a lot of W's to take from it aside from the one that matters. And that's what really counts is they got through it.
There were also a lot of dubs that were being thrown up at the end of that
Dubs
game.
up.
All right, let's get into the roundup. We gotta move through this because we obviously have a lot more football to talk, including previewing the game against Utah. The Seattle Mariners declined to make a qualifying offer to Teoscar Hernandez, which was required to add a compensatory pick if he signed with another team. That qualifying offer would have guaranteed him a 1-year, $20.325 million deal if accepted
What
by
compensatory
November
pick
14th.
would it have been? Do you know what round? It's different in baseball, but
It depends on the size of the contract. If the total size of the contract is over $50 million, it comes earlier, and
that
it
he
would have been
eventually
later.
gets. Why would they not just throw it out there?
So I think the concern is that he would take it, and if you look at it, only 7 players received qualifying offers league-wide, including Shohei Ohtani. It's not like a common thing.
I think they're
going to
get a good pick for that one.
Like, I remember this being a deal with Mitch Haniger last year, who ended up signing a deal for nowhere near this value. And then there's also the element of, I think they might just prefer the team without Teoscar Hernandez at this point from a financial standpoint.
Okay.
Given his strikeout rate and their concerns about that as a flaw of this Mariners, of this Silver Slugger nominated.
They're going to be all
offense.
Contact hitters next year. They're going to swing back so deeply
I don't
far.
think so. I think Julio Rodriguez will probably stay on the roster.
There's still a lot of players. I mean, Kelenic is going to be on the roster. We'll see. But I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Kelenic got traded. But
I wouldn't be shocked, but I would be surprised. And I think his presence is part of the reason.
They
still need a right-handed hitter in this mix, probably.
You're probably right that a 1-year, $20 million guaranteed offer, even though it doesn't tie you up long term, is kind of it's probably larger than Teo's getting.
So I'm not surprised this didn't happen. I don't think this is just the Mariners cheaping out. I think this is how baseball teams run.
And the compensatory pick, it's not the same as the NFL where it's a compensatory pick and then they're on your roster the next year. Well, I do think building out the farm system is an important thing. This pick could
and the other element of it is if you qualify someone, that makes the other team potentially has to give up a pick depending on, their status is in terms of the luxury tax, the competitive balance tax, I suppose, technically, and revenue sharing. So it's a drag on their market when you give them this qualifying offer.
I'm going to guess that Teo gets like 2 years, like $30 million or something like that.
I think that's a reasonable ballpark. But maybe he prioritizes a longer term deal at this age.
I don't know if those are out there.
We'll see. Seattle Kraken split 2 games on their brief homestand, beating Nashville 4-2 before losing 6-3 to Calgary. Their shooting percentage remains mired in the NHL's bottom 10, helping undo average-ish advanced stats in terms of total shots at 5-on-5. They now head back out on the road to face Arizona and Colorado before returning home to host Edmonton and Colorado, their third matchup. Those 2 will be their third matchups against the Avalanche in the season's first 5 weeks. Seattle Sounders in Game 2 of their best-of-3 series with a chance to close out the first sweep in franchise history.
There we go.
The Sounders went behind early on a Paul Arriola score in the 6th minute, then by 2 goals when Jesus Ferreira converted a penalty in the 18th minute conceded by Nuhu. Jordan Morris gave the Sounders a lifeline by stealing a back pass and scoring a goal in the 48th minute. But despite, by all accounts that I read, dominating the play the rest of the way, they couldn't grab an equalizer before substitute Yadar Obrian finished things off with a goal in the 89th minute. Dallas managed 1.7 expected goals to 1.1 for the Sounders, so a fairly deserved loss. And the first time in a while the Sounders have been beaten in terms of XG. Morris with this one now tied for third in MLS playoff goals, trailing Will Bruin and Raul Ruiz-Diaz.
That's overall everybody?
Yeah.
Wow.
Sounders played a lot of playoff games.
That is wild. And have had a lot of players who've just been around for a long time.
Yes, in MLS for a long time, yeah. In Will Bruins' case. This sets up a winner-take-all game three, Friday night in Seattle. Again, a first in franchise history.
I'm just throwing this out there. I think it's kind of cool. Chris texted me, I'm going to LA again for the weekend, so I can't go to this. I probably would have gone to the match.
Because of the possibility of them playing soccer?
Yeah.
You know there's going to be a winner?
Yeah. And then penalties after, like it's going to be tense. It's going to be exciting. I'm just throwing this out there. I think getting to that game 3 was actually kind of fun.
Well, the bad news is if they advance, they will have less time off than their opponent LAFC, who completed a sweep with a 1-0 win in Vancouver.
They should have swept
on Sunday.
I mean, so? That's fine.
Okay.
I think it is going to be the thing we are doing is all for entertainment purposes, right?
It is.
We've talked about this. I don't know if they've really figured it out overall because it doesn't really make sense. In the second round, is it at home and home?
No, it's one game.
One game?
So they are maximizing the number of elimination games, I suppose.
I think MLS kind of just a little bit might have gotten one here.
Wow. Well, you know whose format we may have some questions about is the NWSL, because OL Reign snapped the semifinal streak by continuing their dominance over the hated rival San Diego Wave, who have yet to beat them in 2 seasons worth of competitions, including the NWSL regular season, the regular challenge.
Not even a rivalry,
matchups,
really.
and
I mean, literally none of
NWSL
the players or
playoffs.
fans know it's a rivalry except for us. But also, competitive balance-wise, not even close.
Veronica Latska delivered the winning goal in the 47th minute on what was meant to be a cross, making her the 3rd player in NWSL history to score in consecutive playoff games during the same year, per our friends at Sounder at Heart. Claudia Dickey managed to stop all 4 shots on goal, including 2 from Alex Morgan, to preserve the clean sheet. This sets up the 3rd NWSL championship appearance for the Reign, who previously lost to FC Kansas City in both 2014 and 2015.
FC, that's what they were back then, before they're the current? Okay.
They moved to Salt Lake City and then moved back to Kansas City.
There we go.
Ram style.
How do they? What is the current that they're referring to?
Well, the Missouri River.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll accept it.
And also just like current, it's got multiple meanings. The first of those came at home. That was at Starfarer Stadium. I was in attendance at that one. It was a bummer. And the second on a neutral field.
It was a bummer.
In Portland. It was.
Just so casually dropped in. I was there. It was a bummer.
It wasn't devastating, but it was a bummer. You figured, they'll probably Megan Rapinoe's eventually going to win an NWSL Cup, the championship. There's no way she's not going to. This game will be played at the same spot the Sounders just won, San Diego's Snapdragon Stadium.
Okay.
The Reign will face Gotham FC, which upset the reigning champion Portland Thorns 1-0 in Portland in extra time, with Katie Stengel scoring the winner. Gotham FC was the number 6 seed entering the playoffs, had to win a pair of road games, beating the North Carolina Courage in the opening round before going to Portland. But they finished just 1 point back of the Reign in the standings, so not a real huge difference between these two teams. They were led by 7 goals from U.S. women's national team contributor Lynn Williams. So just as Megan Rapinoe will now have the opportunity to close out her career in storybook fashion with a first NWSL championship in her final game, so too will defender Ali Krieger, her longtime U.S. women's national teammate, close friend, who has also announced her retirement from Gotham FC at season's end. Krieger also made the championship and lost in 2016 with the Washington Spirit. And then there's the other element of this matchup, besides for the fact that one of these two USWNT stars is going to end their career with the championship. The divided loyalties for Sue Bird, who owns a minority share in Gotham FC.
Wow.
Has to choose between her team and her fiance.
I think she's probably going to choose her fiance.
I agree. She was in San Diego last week and not at the Gotham FC game, but she did ask on Instagram earlier, where can I get a Donna Kelsey style split jersey? So
wow.
Who knows what tension there might be between Megan and Sue.
It's going to be frosty if that happens. If I was Megan Rapinoe, I would note that Sue Bird had a chance to win a championship in her final season and didn't.
It's true. And she had won many of them, so it wasn't is all or nothing. I mean, not all or nothing. Like, is Sue actually?
When does this match take place?
Saturday night. I don't think I said that earlier. Saturday night, 5 p.m. It'll be on CBS.
A lot of soccer.
Network TV.
Soccer coming up this weekend.
Absolutely, a big weekend of soccer.
I'm going to see none of it, but this is another one. I mean, I would be there Saturday night watching, if it were possible.
Even if the Reign were hosting that game, it would have been interesting to see what the crowd would have been like.
I was going to say they'd sell it out. I don't know if they'd sell it out, but it would be a hearty crowd.
I agree. Also, I don't know if they would have been able to host it because the Seahawks are playing at home on Sunday. So I guess from that standpoint, it's something. I'd rather have it a neutral field than have to move it to play on the road at Gotham FC, which has happened to them before in the NWSL Challenge Cup.
Gotham. Okay.
Who plays in New Jersey, of course.
Do they really?
Yeah. All the soccer. No, I guess NYCFC
all
plays
the sport.
But the Red Bulls also in New Jersey.
I love that the one team that was named for New Jersey got moved to New York and plays there.
It is really pretty hilarious.
It's very wild.
The Devils are also named for New Jersey, in fairness.
And they play in New York, too?
Yeah.
They play Buffalo, weirdly.
So
Croton-on-Hudson.
This is a big one. I mean, the Reign have been this outstanding team throughout NWSL history, have not managed to parlay it into a championship, and now have this last chance to do it with Megan Rapinoe on the roster. All right, UW basketball got underway Monday night, the opening night of the day of the NCAA season. A doubleheader at Heck Ed. The women dominated an outmatched Sacramento State team 76-28, forcing 22 turnovers, allowing just 10 field goals on 23% shooting. Sophomores Elle Ledeen and Hannah Steins, after excelling off the bench as freshmen, moved into the starting lineup for this one, and Ledeen led the way with 20 points on 9 of 15 shooting as the only starter to reach double figures. The freshman-heavy bench was strong, too, with wing Ari Long scoring 10 points in her NCAA debut, 6 points apiece for guards Chloe Briggs and Savia Sellers. The best sign, the Huskies made 11 threes in this one, more than any game last season. They only topped 8 once, in fact. So Tina Langley continuing to build an exciting program at UW. I don't know that we'll learn a lot more about this team on Thursday when they host North Carolina Central as part of another doubleheader. Playing late at night, 8:30 p.m. tip-off, the men took care of business against Bellarmine.
You know what Husky football calls that? Early.
Oh, even 8:30 start is even late for Husky football.
But the games take a lot longer.
It's true. It ended about the same time as many of the games do. Huskies trailed at one point in the first half of this one, a fair bit of the first half of this one, which officially meant it was UW men's basketball season. But as they often do in those situations, really pulled away, had an extended run late in the first half to take the lead, took an 8-point lead to the break, and then outscored Bellarmine 56-30 in the second half to end up winning this one by 34 points.
This kind of it's a low-key kind of big dub. I feel like people are going to underrate the quality of this victory. Bellarmine is no joke, right? They are a competent Division I college basketball organization.
Yeah, I mean, you asked me what Ken Baum had for this game, and the projection was a 13-point victory for the Huskies.
That's a pretty close game. And by the end, UW crushed them and didn't necessarily even play their best game. I think this defense, seeing Husky, it was something felt weird, and they pointed out like 5 minutes in, it was just like Mike Hopkins isn't playing the zone anymore, and I was like, oh yeah. And this defense, like seeing Wilhelm Breidenbach blocking shots, like they've got some legit defenders on this team. Frank Kepnong, like
you mean Wilhelm Breidenbach?
There we go. He's a beast. This roster has so many dudes, and I do feel like that's kind of the secret to winning in college basketball.
I mean, they were able to survive some injuries in this one. Severe Wheeler sat out. Percy Allen reported that he suffered an injury in practice. Wesley Yates III sat out again. That's a bit more of a long-term concern. And then Braxton Mia played off the bench in this one due to an ankle sprain. Really didn't see a lot of action, I think only in the first half of this one. So they were able to get by without him because Breidenbach was strong on the glass, 8 boards for him. Frank Kepnong, first real game since his ACL tear, was flying around out there, 9 points and 4 or 5 shooting.
Spry. That was, again, a little, wow, Edie's back at Purdue.
Oh, yeah.
Just go to the NBA, dude. Do they want him?
More than they want Drew Timme.
Is Drew Timme still at Gonzaga?
No, he's not. He's in the G League.
Okay. I was like, you
had to double check.
You could have told me that Drew Timme was still at
I should
Gonzaga,
have.
and I would have been. We could have done the whole preview of the game,
That would have been a good bit.
and I would have been like, I would have never known. I would have complained to people about Drew Timme.
So Keon Brooks Jr. had a very slow start, 2 field goals in the first half, poor shooting, finished with 22 points on 9 of 15 shooting.
Yes.
Corin Johnson, game high 25 points, 10 of 14 from the field, 5 of 8 from 3. One of my big concerns, and obviously Severe Wheeler sat out this game, so that changed the rotation, but when they added Wheeler, when they added Paul Mulcahy, Anthony Holland, who played off the bench in this one, like, is Corin Johnson going to, like, get lost in the mix and then end up transferring after the season, and, like, the one local high school recruit we have on the roster is going to be gone? I'm no longer worried about that. Corin Johnson is too fucking good. He has to play. And has to play a lot for this team, even if he's not starting.
Going to. He scored 25 points. Like, he's going to be an integral part of the offense.
But also Nate Kelmies off the bench, 13 points, 5 of 7 shooting, 4 steals in this one. That speaks to what you're talking about, that they can withstand some of these injuries and still put out a rotation of competent NCAA basketball players.
And I think the difference that you would see from almost any other time, any other Mike Hopkins team, is the three-point shooting. They didn't shoot a ton of them. Well, I guess they maybe did. 10 of 20.
No, that's not a ton.
10 of 20.
I don't know what they averaged last year, but it's not a ton.
On threes. Shooting 50% for 3, which is unheard of for a UW team. I mean, Corin Johnson at 5 of 8, right? Like, can Corin Johnson actually shoot?
I think so.
Is this real?
Is
there a shooter at the University of Washington?
He was making a bunch of them when I saw him play at the Nike Hoop Summit in those scrimmages as part of the Portland Generals practice squad.
He's like the first good shooter at UW since C.J. Wilcox.
I don't know if we have to go back that far. They averaged 21 attempts a game last season.
And what did they shoot on those 21
31%.
There we go. Between defense, a little bit of playmaking, and threes, I feel like UW has a team here.
I'm optimistic too. Yeah.
Even Paul Mulcahy, I was looking at him at first. I was on high alert. High alert looking at Paul Mulcahy. And then I was like, all right, yeah, actually, you're okay. He had a play where, were you watching when this happened? It was like near the end of the first half, and he ended up driving. It was like a pretty athletic play. He went up for a reverse layup, got the foul, and I was like, yeah, okay.
No, I mean, look, this guy was a long-term starter at Rutgers who missed him tonight as Rutgers lost to Princeton in their opener.
Oh, no.
Not that that's
Big Ten basketball shaking.
Well, you know who else lost at home in their season opener?
Who is that?
Michigan State.
Oh, no. Isn't Michigan State kind of bad now?
No, they were a top 5 team coming into the country.
Who did they lose to?
They lost to James Madison, not just a football team. Spartans fans
Let's just see if there's a Big 12 invite out there.
They were going through the whole fall like, okay, this football season has been rough. Obviously, the ugliness of what happened there off the field. Just get to men's basketball season. And then you're waiting all that time and they lose the opener to James Madison.
I mean, if anybody deserves to be cursed, it is Michigan State University.
That is very fair.
I'm just throwing that out there.
That is aggressively fair. So the Huskies continue this homestand Thursday. They host Northern Kentucky. The Norse won the Horizon League, were number 16 seed in last year's NCAA tournament, losing 63-52 to Houston.
I can't wait to talk myself into this being a good team, too.
In a competitive game. Oh, this is a good
Not
team.
a competitive game, but this, whether the Huskies crush them, play a close game, lose, whatever, no matter what, I will talk about how this is a good team.
I mean, you will be correct.
I'll be like, the Norse they're really actually a pretty solid team.
I guess they were not rated that much higher than Bellarmine. They also lost their opener at Middle Tennessee State by 17 tonight, so that's not a great sign. They were picked by coaches in the media as the preseason favorites to repeat in the Horizon, albeit without a majority of the first-place votes. Lost 2 starters from that team, but retained guards Marcus Warwick and Sam Vinson. They're 2 double-digit scorers. Warwick averaged 18.8 points on 38% three-point shooting, so someone to watch on Thursday night. Sunday, Nevada comes to town. They entered the season ranked 11 spots ahead of the Huskies and Ken Palm after making the NCAA tournament for the first time under Steve Alford and losing to Arizona State in the first 4. They bring back 3 starters from that team, including leading scorer Jared Lucas and leading assistant Keenan Blackshear. Wolfpack opened the season Tuesday night against Sacramento State.
So that's legitimately a good team. That's an actual barometer game. UW wins that game, and we're feeling better about where
other
things
than
are going.
Gonzaga, that's UW's most marquee non-conference.
More than the St. Mary's San Diego State game in the
those
tournament.
aren't home games. I'm saying home game.
Okay, home game.
Yeah.
What day is that?
That is Sunday night.
Okay. A lot of sports that I'm not going to see this weekend.
Yes. So many sports you won't see.
I'm going to see Tizo touchdown.
All right.
Not a sport.
Now let's talk about the Seahawks. A game that neither of us really saw. Because you said you were able to listen to this?
Yeah.
On the plane?
Yes.
Okay. So you had enough Wi-Fi to stream the audio, but not the video.
Yes. I couldn't even find the video. I had NFL Red Zone going for a little while. It was a beautiful thing. And then we started going up in the air, and I was like, oh, I just reload Red Zone. It'll be perfect. And it was like, Sorry. I see these people all the time talking about how they like streamed games on planes.
I managed to do it last year when I went to Vegas. I watched the Texas-Alabama game.
Why is that never me?
I don't know.
Why am I always listening to a podcast playing a game on my phone?
I got upgraded to first class on that one, so I don't know if the Wi-Fi is better.
The Wi-Fi is better. Things are just a little bit nicer up here. Honestly, if back where I was sitting in row 30 or whatever, no Wi-Fi made it to me.
The cart came through with Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it was very empty at that point. They had dial-up.
You forgot to reserve your
it was
Wi-Fi.
An AOL CD that they handed to me.
You forgot to reserve your Wi-Fi 24 hours in advance.
I did the Save a Spot. I could not recommend it. Not recommend it enough. Every single person on the fucking flight at MVP. I just sometimes like. You know that a lot of people have MVP, but you do kind of feel like royalty when you get on a plane when you have MVP. You know what I mean? And people who have actual good status, like that's nothing, right? It's 20,000 miles. It's easy to get.
It is.
But like people, you're like 5% smug. You can't tell me you're not. You go sit in your exit row every time and you just go plop yourself down. You're like, yeah, I'm in the exit row. I know that you do it.
I don't. I really don't.
Well, I was in row 30, and I felt what it was like to see how the other half lived, and it wasn't great.
So I had Red Zone. I actually had I had signed up for Paramount Plus last month to watch Seahawks Bengals, and then forgot to cancel it.
It didn't work on there. Did it work for you?
Well, it didn't because I was in LA, which was one of 3 markets in the country that did not get the Seahawks Ravens game.
Yeah, that was the issue for me too.
Yeah. So I just had.
I was
Red
in
Zone.
straight up Reddit streams, shit like that. I was trying to load illegal streams, and nothing would load.
It was a good day to not be able to pay much attention to the second half because I was at Disneyland. Let me tell you that because there didn't seem to be a lot to pay attention to.
So, without seeing any of the individual plays, I understood exactly how this game was going. And as I pulled up the radio broadcast at the end of the first quarter, and Ben was talking about how things were the defense was playing really well. It's dogfight or whatever. And I was like, my senses were tingling about this one. And I was like, the Seahawks are playing a defensive battle. The Ravens are about to explode. I could feel it. You know what I mean? Did you feel that too after the first quarter? Or it was I'm smart enough to know. Look, the stats won yesterday. If we want to talk about anything, it is that the advanced stats understood very clearly where the Seahawks were. I think they probably overrated the offense a little bit. And they understood even more clearly where the Baltimore Ravens are.
We'll have an interesting conversation on that when we get there. But yeah, I mean, look, the Ravens now the 3rd highest DVOA through the first 9 weeks of the season on record.
Of all time.
Excluding nobody.
So, the 2 teams ahead of them.
Well, it was 3rd highest, excluding nobody.
Yeah. It's kind of a weird thing to say. 3rd highest, excluding nobody.
Fine. If you must.
They're just really fucking good. And that was kind of my takeaway. I saw Jackson Smith and Jigba drop that pass on the first drive that he bobbled. Did you see this?
I didn't see it, no.
And I was just like, this isn't going well. I knew they were going to lose this game, right? Like maybe I should have been more extreme about it on the podcast last week. I was filled with hope. And as we were there, I thought to myself as Keaton Mitchell ran for 9 carries and 138 yards, sure would be nice to have that second round pick next year. Because I will tell you, this was a game. It was a come to Jesus game for the Seahawks and their Super Bowl chances. You know what I mean? Because there's teams out there that are not even as good as the Ravens that are so much better than they are. I was watching Philadelphia, Dallas, and there's a reality. Look, they might beat some of these teams. I think the Niners are probably a tier behind a lot of the teams that we're talking about at the very top. The Seahawks are not in that group. They're in a third or fourth group in the NFL right now. We have to be honest about it because teams that are actually competing for a Super Bowl, that are looking for a last piece, trading for 30-year-old defensive linemen, do not lose games 37-3. And do I think the Seahawks will make the playoffs? Yes, I do. Do I think that the Seahawks can get lucky enough to win a game in the playoffs? Probably. Do I think the Seahawks are going to the Super Bowl with this team? It would require very strange circumstances to happen. The only thing that, looking for the only thing that you can look at and say, okay, this feels good about the rest of the season is sometimes teams get better throughout the year, but oftentimes they don't. The Seahawks probably are what they are. They probably don't have the quarterback. They have a lot of good young pieces in place. They have some older pieces in place that they need to fix. But that's a reality of where they are. This is year 2 of a rebuild. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, that is what this is. It is an extraordinarily young roster. And I'm upset that the Seahawks lost that thread for a second last week.
Yeah, it's like they just really can't help themselves sometimes because, look, they had a lot of opportunities to not do this rebuild. Going back to the decision to make the Russell Wilson trade in the first place. They could have traded some of those picks for veterans.
I think that rebuild was happening one way or another, but I think Russell Wilson might have made that rebuild happen.
Well, fair point. I take your point to that. But they've chosen the long view on a lot of these decisions. Now, as I noted, they've also interspersed a lot of veteranosity into this group. I think I saw a weighted age
good.
stat.
They're trying to middle it, and it might work. Sorry, what were you saying?
But they just lost self-control. They just saw Brock Purdy and the Niners lose 3 games in a row, and they fell all over themselves trying to take advantage of that window.
Thing. I don't know if they're necessarily wrong. Because
about the Niners?
I don't know if they're necessarily wrong about the NFC West. They might win the NFC West. I don't know if it's likely, but I think it's probably more likely than people are giving it credit for. Again, the Niners still have a hard schedule. I'm just not sure that they're necessarily that good of a team.
But you know who else has a hard schedule?
The Niners have the Ravens on the schedule. They have it at home instead of on the road.
Okay, but that's one game.
No, the Niners
the thing
have
the 49ers have on the schedule is 2 games against the Seahawks.
We will
That's
see.
what they have against
the most likely outcome is they probably split those games.
I mean, yes, it is.
But there is a chance. This game doesn't necessarily change for me whether the Seahawks win the NFC West or not, because we were chalking it up as an L before going in. This is a road game against the 3rd best team in NFL history. In what scenario do you think that the Geno Smith-led Seahawks were going to win that game?
There's a difference between winning the game and getting embarrassed in the game. There's a wide gulf between those two things that they could have operated in.
I do agree with that. And basically what we have to do with this game is we have to throw it out the window, because there's a reality here similar to the Huskies. There's no moral victories at this point of the season. There's no worrying about what they are. They have to beat the Commanders, which we'll talk about, to get to 6-3. That is a must-win game as far as the playoffs are concerned, and the division is concerned. And then they've got to pick some of these games off against really good teams.
But the difference between the Seahawks and the Huskies is, look, the Huskies is all about what happens in these next 3 plus whatever games, and then reset after the season. The Seahawks are, as with the decision to trade for Leonard Williams.
They're not going to trade for Leonard Williams again.
But they're making decisions about the future of their organization based on what happens the rest of this season. So that's why the process matters. And obviously the biggest question now is Geno Smith going to be the quarterback of the Seahawks going forward? Not next week.
Many weeks. There are so many weeks to figure that out that I feel like it's a stupid conversation to have right now, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks. There's more of the season left.
It's more of a question to monitor, but it certainly is interesting that Pete Carroll at this point has come out so defensive of Geno Smith. And I do think
it is too early to even consider benching Geno Smith.
Yeah, I agree with that. The Seahawks failed offensively in this game as a team, not strictly at the quarterback position. You mentioned the Jackson Smith and Jigba drop, the miscommunication with Tyler Lockett that led to the interception that, frankly, I spoke into existence by even mentioning that Geno did. It was Geno Stone. I picked him.
Oh.
You didn't realize that?
Yeah. So that was the first ever Geno on Geno interception in NFL history.
I spoke it into existence.
Wow. I think, again, when you're hearing on the radio, Steve Rabel's so like, he's obviously like on the Seahawks side, and something bad will happen. He's just like, it's a pass and it's picked. And you can just like, it's so crestfallen that it doesn't, he's like.
This is a funny thing about the USC game that I mentioned. They play the highlights of their previous drive from their radio broadcaster, the legendary Pete Arbogast, who is probably the most reserved broadcaster of the home team I have ever heard. Like, Caleb Williams is out there like shaking off 3 defenders and completing this touchdown pass. And it's like, Williams gets away and it's caught for a touchdown. Like, come on, man.
Saying information.
Give me
That's
some excitement.
Kind of what Rabes. It's like the turnovers. He got very excited about.
You got it from the vibes, is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
Is the contrast.
I don't even think it makes sense to have this conversation about Geno Smith. You just have to look at the Lions game that happened. Do you think that the Lions are a worse team now than you did before that game? Or do you think that the Ravens are really fucking good?
I think the Ravens are really fucking good, but I think the Lions have also some questions about whether Jared Goff is the guy to get them to the next level. They just have a lot more outs to get there, as it turns out, even if they tend to trade up they trade up with theirs instead of trading for veterans.
That was kind of like, I don't know. I think the Ravens might be so good that they're an anomaly, that you have to throw this game out.
I mean, I think the one thing that I will say, to your point about the offense versus the defense, this is rankings. I didn't look at the actual like percentages because it would require like the Internet Archive, and I'm not ready to do that level of research. The defense dropped more than the offense after this game because the tone and adjustment on the Ravens is so strong. The offense is 10th in DVOA. The defense is 19th. And I think people got a little high on the defense for beating up on a lot of backup quarterbacks. Although Josh Dobbs maybe is an amazing backup quarterback. Who knows? Who can say at this point?
I do sort of agree with that. And then at the same time, I don't know. Baltimore's just, it's a really hard game. Going into Baltimore, the cross-country trip, the 10 a.m. start, all of those things. That hasn't been
a problem for them in the past. Certainly wasn't a problem for them in 2015.
Lamar Jackson, right now, I assume he's the favorite for MVP at this point. He is playing out of his mind football and has been playing that way all season, right? They lost the one game.
He hasn't been playing. We looked at the stats. He hasn't been playing that way.
They lost the one game because his receivers ended up dropping every single pass. But watching that, I was like, I think that was the Steelers game that they lost. As I was watching the game, I was like, if these receivers, a couple of them caught these passes, they would have won by 2 touchdowns. So I don't know. Baltimore's just really good. And I think Baltimore is at a different level than the Niners, the Cowboys, the Eagles as well. I think they are at a level all on their own right now. And so by being on that level, a lot can happen. Because, again, it's week 10 of the NFL season. And the one positive to take away from this is teams change throughout the year. We didn't even know who Brock Purdy was at this point last year.
I mean, that is true.
NFL seasons are long, and they're only getting longer. So
Patrick Mahomes is the favorite for MVP. Lamar Jackson tied for second with Jalen Hurts.
Okay. Still, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I don't even actually think Mahomes is playing particularly well. So I get it. And betting markets are probably betting on him being good and then improving or whatever. But like, I think Lamar Jackson's probably outperforming Mahomes so far this year.
I don't know. I mean, his advanced stats weren't that great, but coming into last week, I think you're a little higher on his performance than you should be. Not that he's playing poorly.
A couple of things went sideways, and the Ravens just ended up crushing the Seahawks. Geno got some balls batted down.
A couple of things went sideways, I don't believe, because the Seahawks were averaging like 2 fucking yards per play the entire first half.
No,
that's not a couple of things
but
going
also,
sideways.
The offensive line
That's
isn't
a bad
healthy.
process.
I don't think Ken Walker is the right running back for that type of game. I told you that going in. It's not like Charbonnet played better. Like, I couldn't take a victory lap because Charbonnet also had bad stats, but like, Ken Walker was legitimately bad in the game. I don't know. There really was no positive to take away from that one individual game. The only positive is they have a much easier game this week, and they have a much easier game the week after, and then we'll see. Right?
And then we'll see the Seahawks story. Lamar Jackson currently 10th in the EPA plus CPOA composite. So
those numbers are just bonkers.
The Washington Commanders are 26th.
We're moving on.
Yeah.
All right.
I thought that's what you were saying. That's
okay. Then we'll see.
Washington Commanders are 26th, and DVOA dropped 2 spots last week despite beating the Patriots 20-17 to improve to 4-5 on the season. Their 4 wins have come by a combined 17 points. They have lost 2 games by at least 17 points individually, including at home to the Bears on Thursday Night Football. Their best win, probably 24-16 over the Falcons in Atlanta. There's not a lot to choose from. But Sam Howell has been not bad, fine. 15th in EPA plus CPOA composite, 1 spot ahead of Geno. Almost identical statistical profiles as well, with the interesting exception of success rate. Howell's 22nd there at 44%, Smith's 10th there at 49%, which I think speaks to the Seahawks' third down issues, where those are bigger swings in terms of EPA per play, but don't have disproportionate effect on success rate. Howell leads all quarterbacks in the NFL with 353 pass attempts, including 40 plus 5 of the last 6 weeks, which has been great for my team that picked him up in fantasy. He's therefore second in total yards, but 19th in the NFL in yards per attempt. He's tied for the most interceptions in the NFL, but on a per play rate is throwing them less frequently than Geno. His 44 sacks taken are 14 more than anyone else in the NFL, and the 11% sack rate is third highest among qualifying quarterbacks. So that's a situation where the Seahawks, particularly playing at home in front of that crowd, need to get after Sam Howell repeatedly in this one. Terry McLaurin, easily his top option with 70 targets, catching 67% of them for 8.1 yards per target. Targets for Jahan Dotson, their number 2 receiver, have been much less productive, yielding 6.3 yards per apiece. While a healthy tight end Logan Thomas is the reliable short option, catching 72% of his targets, albeit for just 9.4 yards per reception. Washington's run game fairly average statistically. Brian Robinson Jr. has gotten the vast majority of the carries while averaging 4.0 yards per attempt. The real surprise is this Washington defense, which has been much ballyhooed over the years, ranking 29th in defensive DVOA, same spot in drop back EPA against, which helps explain Washington's decision to trade off edges Montez Sweat and Chase Young prior to the trade deadline. Despite their presence, the Commanders ranked 24th in pass rush win rate, 28th in run stop win rate entering last week. Young was 11th in pass rush win rate and had 5 sacks. Sweat had 6.5. Their departure leaves Casey Toohill with 4 as the Commanders' remaining leader. Unsurprisingly, they did not sack Mac Jones on 44 dropbacks on Sunday.
I think this one's shaking up kind of nicely overall. To come off that Baltimore game, look nearby in the D.C. area and see the Washington Commanders there. I think this is a very, very good situation for the Seahawks of a team to be coming into town. Secondary is ahead. I mean, a lot of the damage, Lamar did good, but you kind of have to look at the linebackers and the defensive line a little bit more than the secondary in that game against the Seahawks. The secondary still is going to be fine, and they're going to be especially fine against Sam Howell. Big plays are incoming this week. There's going to be the picks. There's going to be possibly defensive touchdowns. They'll just have a lot of chances for them also.
Yeah. I think the one thing that doesn't profile well is the Washington defense fairly average in terms of run defense. And, I think the Seahawks would really like to get that run game going again early and use that to set up play action because, like everyone else in the NFL, they continue to believe that is necessary.
I mean, it would be... This is going to be a better one for Geno as well.
Oh, yeah.
Not having that kind of pass rush, he was swarmed constantly. Even watching the highlight of the DK Metcalf underthrow or whatever in the end zone, seeing Charles Cross just he was backing up for his life on that play. How quick you could see offensive linemen when they're scared, and that was the type of play where he was taking such a huge drop on that one, and Geno trying to get it out, it was coming instantly. And whether the line is healthy or not this week, whether Abe Lucas is back or not,
he won't be back this week.
I think there's an outside chance, but
I mean, there's a chance he practices this week. I don't think it's realistic to expect him to play in the game.
this is going to be a different kind of game. There's not going to be 1 catch for DK Metcalf, 3 for Tyler Lockett, right? Like, they are going to these are unheard of stats for Tyler Lockett, the 3 receptions and 8 targets. That means he's getting balls just like prayers being thrown to him or whatever.
Yeah.
The ball basically being thrown away. They're going to have time to create separation. Gino's going to have time to do his thing. I think the offense is going to look good this week, and I think they're going to comfortably win this one against Washington.
Yeah, they're also allowing 12.0 yards per completion, the 4th most in the NFL. So opportunity for big plays through the air in this one. Percentage chances of victory?
Like 77%.
I'm not quite that optimistic. Let's go 70%.
And again, it's a big one to win. I mean, Washington's been giving up points. They lost to the Bears 40-20. Like, that's kind of what this team is. They've given up 33 to the Broncos. Obviously, they played the Eagles twice already and have given up 30+ in both of those. Like, I think this will be a get-right kind of game for the Seahawks and just move on from that Baltimore one. I'm sure they had a lot of fun.
Really move on from the stretch of playing the top 2 defenses in the NFL back-to-back.
Yes, absolutely.
The schedule has been favorable for the Seahawks more in terms of the Seahawks defense, the offenses they've faced, than the defenses they've faced.
And that's about to change a little bit. What is the Tuesday where you move on?
Tell the Truth Tuesday?
No, that's Tell the Truth Monday.
Yeah, you're right. He really passed up the alliteration there. I don't know. I was reading Win Forever on this road trip, but I haven't gotten to that chapter yet.
Okay. The defenses, even though they are playing against good teams, the Niners, the Cowboys, the Eagles, until they play the Steelers on New Year's, they're not necessarily at that same level as what they've seen so far. I mean, they literally played the 2 best defenses in the NFL in back-to-back weeks, right?
Yeah, they did. I mean, I don't think Cleveland dropped out of there.
But then you look at the defensive, where's defensive DVOA rank? Wow, the Broncos. Cowboys are still pretty good, but beyond that, none of those other teams are anywhere. Niners are 15th. The Eagles are 21st. I'll tell you that Eagles defense yesterday looked like you could move the ball against them. So they're much better offenses, but at the same time, the defenses are going to be nowhere near the number 1 and number 2 in back-to-back weeks.
Do people really think Drew Lock is good? Like, is this just like columnist shit, or do people actually think Drew Lock is good at quarterbacking? I don't know. I just saw Jim Moore calling for the Seahawks to bench Geno Smith.
Already? Just to bench him?
Yeah.
I think there's a point that it makes sense to try it out, but we have come nowhere near that point.
I agree. All right, let's wrap up by looking ahead with the Huskies, starting with an injury update. Jalen McMillan did not travel for the USC game, and offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb told reporters Monday that McMillan is seeking a second opinion on his knee injury. With him absent, Giles Jackson did play, giving the Huskies just one more regular season game with Jackson if they want to utilize a red shirt and retain his 6th and final season of eligibility. So, what they learn on McMillan will certainly influence that decision, but also you kind of got to try to win these games, as you've outlined. A.C. Turner will not be back this week per Kalen DeBoer. Backup safety Cam Fabiculanen played just 1 snap on Saturday, as the Huskies largely moved Mishael Powell to free safety, with Jabbar Muhammad playing the Husky/nickel position. That left them vulnerable on the perimeter at corner, something USC exploited in a way Utah might not this weekend. We'll see if they continue to go with that one. Obviously not as strong a run combination, which might also be an issue. Vince Nunley also potentially back in the mix after he played some snaps last week. Tuli Letu-Lasanoa played 14 snaps according to PFF, and co-defensive coordinator Chuck Morrell said the hope is he might double that this week.
Okay.
Utah, the back-to-back Pac-12 champs, have played the entire season without starting quarterback Cam Rising after he suffered an ACL tear in the Rose Bowl. Utes had hoped he would return before ruling him out for the season in October. Utah started 4-0 without him, without allowing more than 13 points in any game, including a win over UCLA, before losing 21-7 at Oregon State. They bounced back to win 34-32 at USC and begin this continue this streak for the Trojans before getting crushed 35-6 at home by Oregon. Then followed that up by a 55-6 domination of Arizona.
How did that happen?
So part of it is that Utah's defense is very good.
Yeah.
and their offense seems to be improving a little bit. Also part of it, Trenton Bourget, who's not been playing well for Arizona State, but has been playing adequately.
Yeah.
Has been playing, he's been playing for Arizona State. He got hurt early in this one. And they turned to, I think, their fourth string quarterback, because I think Drew Pine might still be injured. Let me go see if I can dig up this box score. But there was names at quarterback I did not recognize from my Arizona State prep. And let me tell you, it did not go super well for them. Yes, Jacob Conover was playing at quarterback for them. He completed 5 of 22 passes for 41 yards and an interception.
Oh, my God. 5 of 22 passes?
5 of 22
It's like
passes.
Geno Smith level stats.
Oh, boy. As a team, they completed 8 of 29 passes for 40 yards, a 1.4 yards per pass average. All right, we'll talk about the Utah defense in a second. Let's start with their quarterback situation. Fourth-year sophomore Bryson Barnes, who replaced Rising in the Rose Bowl, opened the season as the starter before redshirt freshman Nate Johnson replaced him in the fourth quarter at Baylor while trailing. After leading a comeback win, Johnson started the next 3 games before giving way to Barnes during the loss at Oregon State. Barnes has remained the starter ever since. Either way, certainly not a dynamic passing attack. The Utes rank 9th in the Pac-12 in completion percentage, last by a wide margin in passing yards per game. Barnes 9th of 11 qualifying Pac-12 quarterbacks in QBR, and Utah is 10th among Pac-12 teams in FPI offensive efficiency. Last week might have been the most impressive performance for that Utah offense, which had 6.7 yards per play, the second most Arizona State has given up all year behind USC. They also had the second best yards per play that USC has given up behind only UW. Those games much more about the rushing offense for Utah, easily the run-heaviest team in the Pac-12, running on more than 60% of plays. They ran for 247 yards at USC and 352 last week against Arizona State. The 2 losses have seen the Utes average 2.8 yards per carry against Oregon, 1.8 at Oregon State, with sub-100 rushing yards in both of those games. Jaquindon Jackson has taken over as their lead running back, has averaged 5.3 yards per carry, but really watch out for two-way player Sione Vaki, who has averaged 8.1 yards per carry and 24 yards per reception out of the backfield, is both a traditional running back and a wildcat quarterback, in addition to starting at safety. He has 7.5 tackles for loss this season and an interception. Didn't run at all on Saturday against Arizona State. They didn't need him, but he's been a big part of Utah's offensive.
It's definitely
over the course
very
of the
much a Shaq Thompson type situation.
I think people are more comparing it to Miles Jack, but yeah, Shaq Thompson as well. Because Miles Jack was really still more of a luxury on offense. It was just like
Shaq Thompson was the lead running back for the Huskies.
Right. I mean, he has not gotten to that point yet. So, but that was a situation where this guy's really good on defense, but we need him desperately on offense. So we're going to play him there. The Utah defense ranks 9th in the country in FPI efficiency, an improvement for last year's team, which finished 16th. Under Kyle Whittingham, they have ranked in the top 25 9 of the last 10 seasons defensively. So there's your Big Ten defense in the Pac-12.
I mean, they beat USC.
Their run defense ranks 3rd among Pac-12 teams in EPA per play. Their pass defense is the best in the conference in that regard. Opponents are completing just 55% of attempts, the 10th lowest in FBS, but lowest in the Pac-12 by a mile. Their yards per completion is fairly unremarkable, so maybe some ability to beat them deep, but that wasn't really the formula for either Oregon or USC, who simply moved the ball regularly with high completion percentages in both of those games. Utah is 14th in FBS in sacks, with breakout star Jonah Ellis responsible for 11.5 of them, good for 3rd in FBS, after coming into this season with 4 in his career, including he nearly matched that with 3.5 against UCLA alone. So that will be a challenge for this UW offensive line that was pretty effective, I think, for the most part on Saturday.
Parker Brailsford especially.
Yes.
Noted that. Utah's scary. I don't really know how else to describe it.
Yeah.
This after USC, this was the other game that we kind of had circled. Obviously Oregon as well, but this was the one that early on.
Wait, or this before Oregon?
No. Oregon's like an obvious, or whatever.
Okay.
I kind of meant the second half of the season after beating Oregon.
Oregon State's really good too.
I know.
Schedule's very hard.
Every game is scary, but the next week is the most important game in each one. I think that's the formula for the Huskies to win this one is just do their thing, be a little bit aggressive as far as like going for fourth downs, things like that, making sure that they score, picking up third downs when they get in those third and short situations, and letting Michael Penix, do his thing on third downs where he's able to find receivers for 7 yards if it's 3rd and 6.
An interesting thing about last Saturday's game is it felt to me like USC was relying much more on converting third and short. But then you looked at the stats, and UW actually had way more third down completions than USC did.
I kind of thought that too.
And attempts. It wasn't just that they were converting them at a higher percentage. They were in that situation more.
They're very good at it, and it's not necessarily the most reliable thing over a super, super long period of time, but this offense is able to move so well that it kind of is. They're able to hit Rome Odunze in those situations. They're able to hit Jack Westover in those situations.
Didn't see a ton of Jack Westover on Saturday. Josh Cuevas played a surprising amount. I was surprised by that.
I think the thing that makes me the most scared about Utah is the sustained drives and just limiting the game, right? If Utah is able to take 6-7 minutes, run the ball a ton, score a touchdown, and then quick 3 and out for UW, that's the kind of situation that we need to be really, really wary of. So the hope is that UW can just get out ahead in this game early and kind of take that away just a little bit. If they can get a turnover early, a couple of punts, something like that, and get that 2-score lead that we talked about with USC, I think it's a totally different type of ball game. That's 100%. What Oregon did to them. I think the wheels can fall off for Utah in a game like that because they don't have that explosive offense.
Yes.
If it's a close game, all of a sudden things are very, very scary. So I think it really comes down to that UW has to score early, and they have to score. They always have to score on every drive. That's kind of how this is set up or whatever. But like, if they can get a couple of touchdowns early, and if it was like a 14-3 type game, something like that, I think that things could end up okay. Obviously, being at home is huge. Forcing Bryson Barnes to do this here against a good team, and then the defense showing up, hopefully making a play of some kind, would be monster.
Which, look, they have done that. The USC win was on the road.
Oregon ran the ball against them, though, right?
They ran the ball, well, not outstanding. 27 carries for 142 yards overall. Bo Nix was pretty much a non-factor. Bucky Irving had 14 for 83. So it's not like a team that you can't run on. But obviously the Oregon run game is better than UW's run game over the course of the season by far. I mean, I think the way I feel about Utah is they're kind of the football version of the Miami Heat. Like, if you play a rock fight and let them play that kind of style, they can definitely beat you, even though they're less talented. But if you're like Denver in the NBA Finals last year, there's a level of firepower that you can get to that they just can't match. So
USC did not have that firepower, though.
They did not.
For what it's worth. I mean, again, that's USC's defense. They only scored 32 points against USC as well in USC. And there's kind of something about that one that it's going to look a little bit different. Their offense just can't move that way. But like,
Oregon also made Vaki a non-factor, 5 carries for 11 yards in that game, as opposed to you look at his influence in their other recent wins. The USC game, if I'm pulling this up here, if it loads for me at some point here. Oh, we've only got his defensive stats on ESPN. This is a problem. Got to go to Sports Reference. So fill a little bit here.
I just kind of look at the Oregon game, though, and the touchdowns that they scored early, where they came down, drove all the way down the field. The game was over after basically at the end of the first half. There was almost no chance in them coming back. When you saw Oregon come down and score that drive immediately against their defense, it's not an easy thing to do, but I think UW's offense is just as good as Oregon's and is capable of doing something like that and punching in. We'll see Dylan Johnson from here on out as well. I'm not willing to just say that that's like a one-game anomaly from Dylan Johnson. I think this is something that UW wants to do against teams.
Vaki against Cal, 15 carries for 158 yards against USC.
Cal's defense is low-key very bad, right?
It's not great. 9 carries for 68 yards, 5 catches for 149 yards, and 2 touchdowns against the USC defense. So
The run game is stoppable, though. You talked about that. Jaquindon Jackson was 12 for 37 against Oregon. Sione Vaki was 5 for 11 against Oregon. It's like, beat us, right? Throw over the top.
Yeah.
Do that. Beat us deep.
But you got to be able to tackle to make that work as well.
I don't know. Is Oregon a much better tackling team than UW? I don't know. I guess we'll see. But, like, just stop the run. And if Utah is going to beat you, you have to make Bryson Barnes do it.
Certainly at this point, you would say the biggest difference between UW and Oregon is that the Oregon defense is much better. FPI efficiency, they're rated 16th. UW, after Saturday, despite playing a very good USC offense, dropped to 41st in defense.
Where's UW offense?
4th.
And
Oregon is 3rd.
I do not want to see Oregon again.
Like, they're basically the same offensively. And this is what we talked about.
Who's ahead of them? Who are the two teams ahead of them?
Michigan and LSU. LSU is really good offensively. I did not know that, but really bad. They're even more lopsided than USC. 99th defensively. So
I do love the panic that we've had at various times about UW offense being, oh my God, about the thanks ESPN.com. But the panic that we've had about the UW offense as they rank 4th in the country.
I said it last week. People pay too much attention to the direction of things and not enough to the overall. And my concern coming out of the Stanford game was 100% about the defense, and it remains about the defense. Not from the other thing I want to say at the end of this pod as we wrap up here is, like, I don't want us to get to the point where it's defined with, like, the Huskies not going to the college football playoff as a failure of a season. Like, it's not a 12-team playoff. It's really hard to do. So I don't think we should take for granted what this team is accomplishing, even if it doesn't ultimately result in a spot in the playoff.
That's a conversation for if they lose a game.
Now,
we are having the conversation of just go out and fucking win every week. Like Kalen DeBoer says, we just keep winning. That's all that matters right now. I don't care how it happens. It does not matter. Just keep winning. And that's what this team has done.
I prefer it not include Connor Stallions.
What?
You don't know this? That's the guy. Name of the guy in the Michigan scandal?
Yeah, but you're saying that
I don't want them to cheat to win.
No, but I mean that's not what's happening. Michigan clearly is number one offense, obviously. The read of the defense is science.
Connor Stallions.
So, but they just have to keep winning. I'm not going to worry about what the season means until later. We're having a fun time right now because they keep winning and they're part of the conversation. They're ranked 5th in the country. Whether they should be higher or not, who knows? But I'm enjoying it right now.
Well, I enjoyed last Saturday. That's for sure.
Going into I guess if that's what you're trying to say is we shouldn't take for granted how unique it is to go into USC at Memorial Coliseum and win a game like that against the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. It's not an easy thing to do. And it was an awesome victory. This week they have another very, very tough test against an extraordinarily good Utah team. And hopefully they get through it and they just keep winning.
On that note,
thanks for listening.
Thanks.